Welcome to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken. Shep will talk with some of the smartest thinkers in business to help make you more successful in your professional and personal life. This is Amazing Business Radio with Shep Hyken.
Hello, everybody. It's Shep Hyken here. We're back with another episode of Amazing Business Radio. I am so excited about our guest today. I know I say that every week, but get this. We have the CEO of Medallia, Joe Tyrrell, joining us today. For those that don't know it, Medallia helps their customers create incredibly great personalized relationships. You'll learn more about what they do, but the ultimate result is that they want their customers, their clients, if you will, to retain their customers, attract new customers, and grow relationships. Now, who doesn't want to do that? Well, this is a major technology company that's been around for years that has been helping companies do that. And so we're going to get a look behind the curtain or take a look under the hood and see what's going on when we talk with the CEO, Joe Tyrrell. All right, before we get into that, quick announcement. If you've got an amazing story that you want to share, or a question that you want to ask, just reach out to me on any of the social channels. And if it is a question, use the hashtag AskShep. I'll either answer it right here on the show in my newsletter, the Shepherd Letter, on the social channel that you reach out to me on, or perhaps on my TV show, which is Be Amazing or Go Home. And episodes can be found on Amazon Prime, Roku, Apple TV, or just go to beamazing.tv and you can binge watch all of them. That's beamazing.tv. All right, let's jump into our interview. Joe, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Shep.
So I'm excited. We're going to talk about Medallia, who I have been going to customer experience conferences for years, and there's always a Medallia booth when we're talking about taking care of business, understanding the data, understanding who our customers are, what we want to create a better experience. But before we get into that, I've got to ask you a personal question. Now, I'm going to tell everybody listening that I talked with Joe prior to starting the interview, but I did not ask him this. So prior to coming to Medallia, just in the last year or so, you served as president of a mortgage technology company. How do you go from mortgages to Medallia?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've spent my entire career kind of in and around Silicon Valley running software companies. The last couple of years, I was working for a company called ICE. Now, most people won't be familiar with the name of that company, but they'll probably know and recognize the names of the companies that they own and operate, like the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, small company. Yeah.
Well, small company. And so the way ICE is structured, it's really three core business units. So they have the exchange business, which is 13, 14 exchanges around the world and all of the, settling of all those transactions, a multi-billion-dollar data business, and then a multi-billion-dollar technology business that I was running. And so the parallels for me are easy to make because I kind of grew up through a product lens of as an executive. And so I've always focused a lot on the user's experience. And you combine that with, when you think of someone like Google, which, some data will tell you that they're responsible for facilitating the exchange of about 6.5 billion transactions of data each day. Just the New York Stock Exchange alone is 500 billion per day.
Wow.
So
wow. It's still not as big as the deficit in the US, but it's
true. But so I'm used to working with data at scale. I'm used to working with data that helps inform decisions and all of that happening real time. I'm used to leveraging a lot of machine learning and not heuristic, but neural network machine learning and dealing with a lot of AI to help people make, more efficient, more effective business decisions.
Wow. Well, it sounds like Medallia really hit pay dirt when they got you to come over and join them.
That's what I tell them all the time.
And I'm sure somebody's saying, well, the jury's still out on that one. But no, I love it. Well, let's jump into the conversation of my life, which is customer experience. And so much of it in the past year, and I've talked to a number of people on the show, maybe even the past couple of years, has been all about AI and generative AI. And when you think about ChatGPT just in November of 2022 becoming, I guess, known by the public would be a good way of saying it. Yet even today, about a year and a half later, a lot of the public still doesn't quite understand the capabilities and the power they have at no charge on their computer. And if they love Google, they would love this. And and here's a point that you made in my notes here, that the generative AI momentum has been so widespread that 85% of executives say technology will be interacting directly with customers in the next 2 years. Now, I think that's already happening. So, what's going to be the difference between the past few years and what's coming up in the future?
It's really going to be kind of the personalization that the technology is going to enable. So when you think about generative AI, when I first started with Medallia, I went and talked to a number of the CEOs and executives in our client base. And one of the things that they all shared was that they were all very interested in leveraging generative AI. And when I probed a little bit deeper in terms of, great, what are the specific use cases that you're thinking about? Nobody had any answers. So they all know that they want to use it, but none had a clear path forward of specifically the value it was going to bring, the problems it was going to solve. And when I probed a little bit deeper about, well, if we're ready to go today to start to solve some of those problems, are you prepared organizationally to leverage generative AI? And the answer was no. And that's because you have to think about how are you going to use AI both responsibly and ethically, but also how do you do it in a way where you don't introduce unintended consequences, or even worse, unintended bias. And so what we've been doing in how we're rolling our AI forward, first of all, we've got a decade of experience at Medallia using AI. Generative AI is a little bit different in terms of, I want to be able to interact with it. I want it to be able to, the very nature of generative is give me something kind of real time while I'm interacting with it. So what we've done is we've deployed 4 brand new generative AI capabilities, but all with a very specific focus on solving real business issues. Because the challenge with generative AI, people look at it as something like a chat GPT. Well, first of all, you're not going to take all of your customer data and upload it to start to train public algorithms. You don't take your data and put it out in the wild like that. OpenAI's got some alternatives now with its enterprise license where it's just your data, you're just training it for yourself, which is a really good alternative. But then you also have to figure out, well, what's your AI going to be on top of that? What's the UI going to look like? Who's going to actually train it? But then it's even more fundamental. Who do you want to be able to ask questions? What questions do you want to be asked? And are you prepared for the answers? So I could go in and I could ask a generative AI interface, what are the stores in my company that are the most racist? Now, that may sound like a jarring example, but you're going to get an answer. And unfortunately, that answer is only going to be as good as the data that generative AI can access.
And where does it get the data for that? It's not going out in the web and capturing reviews. Is it data that you have to put in directly?
Yeah, so it's fascinating how many startups have come and talked about, well, you give us your data and then we can, return any sort of answer. But when you start digging under the covers, well, what technology are you using? And how are you ensuring that my data is staying somewhat protected, or at least within kind of my own little universe? They don't have good answers. In fact, they're going out and scraping websites, which has a whole other kind of legal and ethical consequences associated with it. So the way that we've designed all of our AI at Medallia is first and foremost flexibility. So we have our own large language models that can handle over 300 million parameters of data. We can deploy that if you'd like to use ours. If some of our customers are some of the largest technology companies in the world, they already have their own LLMs. They can simply plug theirs in. If they want to use an OpenAI enterprise license, we can incorporate that as well. Or if they want their own proprietary LLM, then we can give them one of ours as a starting point. We can train it for them and it becomes their then proprietary LLM. But the flexibility is still with a focus on what problems are we trying to solve. And so we're focused on solving business problems for customers. So in the AI, we've deployed each of them as a specific use case that will help address issues that those companies are trying to solve. And you mentioned Ask Athena. Ask Athena is essentially a business-specific chat GPT-like interface that can be deployed at a company level and personalized for that company. So we could have a large hospitality company of ours that might say, can you tell me in this specific location, what's the number one thing that I need to do to improve the guest experience? And what it will tell you is it's the quality of your towels.
Really, because it's looking at all the feedback coming in from all of the surveys, discovering what customers or guests are actually saying about you, either in verbatim comments, which give you the qualitative information, and perhaps, as they check boxes and click on, whatever, it also gives you that quantitative. That's fascinating. So it's really pulling it together and making it real easy.
Yeah, and it's not just surveys. Surveys is just one data point. There are
Mm-hmm.
so many data points that customers give to companies today, whether it's through social feedback, whether it's if you're a patient or a guest of a hospitality, it's while you're actually in the facilities, there's all this feedback. And also there is a lot of information in what they don't say. And that's really the next frontier that we're focusing on is, when they're not responding to you, what are they actually telling you? And there's ways you can triangulate that to actually validate what the silence means. And so we're looking at capturing information everywhere that customer may be creating signals, bringing it in. Certainly we'll use surveys more as a validation point than as a primary, means of feedback, because there's just so many other interesting points of data that you can leverage.
So you are, in fact, pulling from ratings, review sites, social comments, and that type of thing.
So we have, direct API relationships with a lot of these kind of social sites where people would give feedback because we don't believe in screen scraping. We believe in being straightforward and having
Love that.
direct relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Plus that we can also ensure higher levels of just performance and accuracy of data. So yeah, we have connections into all the places where people are expressing themselves. And so we can capture that information, bring it in, aggregate it, kind of interpret it, translate it, correlate it, and then deliver insight back to our customer.
Wow. Wow. Well said. Let's take a quick break. We're getting a look under the hood, so to speak, of this ginormous engine that Medallia has and how it's helping to create a better experience by allowing Medallia's customers to better understand everything that's going on with their customers, clients, guests, patients, whatever they want to call them. We're coming right back with Joe Tyrrell. Do not go away. One of my favorite sayings is that customer service isn't a department, it's a philosophy. And it's a philosophy that must be embraced by everyone in the organization all the time, and that's 24/7. So if customer service is important to you, and I know it is, then you will love our virtual training, the ultimate on-demand customer service and experience training program that you can access anytime, anywhere. Now, the course content applies to everyone, regardless of position and responsibility, from senior executives to the most recently hired and everyone in between. You'll discover tips, ideas, and strategies that won't cost your company a fortune, but will produce what I call moments of magic, those positive experiences, and it will happen at every level of your organization. So go to Customer Service VT. That's V as in virtual, T as in training. That's customerservicevt.com. It's time to get customer focused.
You're listening to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken.
We're back on Amazing Business Radio talking with Joe Tyrrell of Medallia. And let's talk about personalization. You mentioned that in our last segment, and I want to dive deeper into that because here's a stat that comes from your Medallia market research from just last year. 82% of consumers say a personalized experience influences the brand they end up purchasing in at least half of all shopping situations. It kind of reminds me of the Cheers TV show, if you remember that. And for some of those millennials and Gen Zs, I'll give you a hint. It was a show in the 70s, maybe early 80s, and the theme song was Where Everybody Knows Your Name. This is the bar that people go to, named Cheers in Boston, and they love it because they're recognized. They know who they are. And I would imagine that's part of the personalization experience that we're talking about here, is you feel connected to the brand. They know who you are.
You're 100% right. I mean, that specific lyric is sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name.
There you go. You know it better than I do.
And it's interesting. It's because, you feel connected to not just the place, but you can feel connected and being seen as not a consumer, but as a person. And that's really the goal of personalization. So within Medallia, our North Star that guides every decision we make, every investment dollar that we spend, is this guiding principle of our mission is to personalize every experience. Now, the key word in there, the tough part of that North Star is not the word personalize.
It's
It's
every.
the word every.
Yeah.
That's the key. Because if you do it sometimes, and then the next time you interact with that same consumer, you act as if it's the first time you're meeting them, you've really invalidated all of the work that you've done in the previous visits or previous experiences that you've created for them. So for us, personalization is key. And I'll give you just a simple explanation of how we do this without the customer ever saying one word or giving us one bit of feedback vocally. We have technology that when someone typically starts to interact with you, they tend to first go online because they can do it in an anonymous way, and they start looking around for information. So they go to a website, they start looking to engage or find an answer to their questions. Their mouse moves to the left, then it moves to the right, then back to the left because they can't find what they're looking for. For some companies, they pop up a chatbot that says, would you like to interact? They may even try to interact with the chatbot only to realize it's a chatbot and it's not really going to be able to answer the specific questions that they have. So they get back on the mouse and they're navigating to the left and to the right. And then ultimately they search for a customer service number, which they call and they wait on hold. And then once they've been on hold for a certain amount of time, they're prompted to, would you like to receive a callback in 7 minutes? And then they select that option and then they wait. And so when you bring all those different signals, those different elements together, which we do today at Medallia, and you know that the customer journey is, I'm looking for something, I don't want to engage with a chatbot, I'm not finding on your website, I want to talk to someone, and I actually want you to call me, then the very next time that person goes to that site, you can actually predict the exact experience they want and personalize a journey. So we have technology that will actually track the movement of the mouse. And so after the second movement of the mouse, we could just simply pop up on the screen, looks like you have a question and you can't find what you're looking for. Would you like us to call you back in 3 minutes? That's how you get to a level of personalization where that consumer's got to be sitting there going, how did they know that's my preference? It's because you told us that was your preference. You just didn't use words.
Wow. Does anybody ever say this is creepy?
Well, there's always a level of that. In fact, with all of the technology that's available today, you can actually make it very personal, but then you can invalidate that personal experience by going too fast. So for example, we have an AI capability that we've introduced called Smart Response. So it gathers in any interaction that you're having with a consumer, a guest, a patient, an employee, whoever it might be, and it will not only look at that, the question they're asking or the feedback they've provided, it'll go back and look in history, and our customers can set whether they want that to be the last 3 communications, the last 3 months of communications. Because you don't want to ever answer something in a vacuum, because then the customer's like, well, I just gave you feedback yesterday and you're not even taking that into consideration. When we've been rolling this out with customers, not only have they told us, obviously it's real time, so it happens instantly, it's more personalized than what their humans were doing, but it's more empathetic than what the humans are doing. And if you think about that for just a second, if I'm a human and I'm responding to customer, guest, employee inquiries all day long, I'm going to be super empathetic the first couple. By the 34th, by the 35th, I just got to get through this, right?
You're burning out. Yep.
You're burning out. And you don't know what that human went through. You don't know if they had a bad commute. You don't know if they were, in an argument with their spouse, or for all you know, today was the day they got their performance review and didn't get a good review, and now they got to go back and do their job. And so the challenge there is, even though it can be more empathetic and more personalized, if you respond back within a millisecond, then your guest, your consumer, your employee knows it's not real person, right?
Right.
They know it's just a machine. So that's where you've got to have a balance of not being too creepy by being too fast, but leverage all of the capabilities that the personalization can bring to the customer's journey and experience.
Well, I am on the side of humans that would love for it to be creepy. Stick a chip in my neck, give me the best, quickest, fastest information service, whatever you want to call it. If it makes my life better, I'm okay with it because honestly, I don't know what in my personal life that I probably don't want everything out there, but it really isn't bad. It won't get me arrested. It won't, that kind of thing. But there's something that you made me think of when you talked about moving around the mouse, people not saying anything, and eventually making it to an agent or getting on the line and having somebody call you back 7 minutes later. There's a measurement that I refer to as time to happiness. And what I realized a long time ago is people may not reach out to you when they have their problem. Could have happened this morning, it could have happened yesterday. But by the time they do reach out to you, or in this case, as you explained it, by the time they start looking at your website, moving around, and you can track where they're looking at and for lack of a better term, the movement of the mouse gives you an indication as to what they're actually doing or not finding. There's still that time to happiness. Have you ever thought about that? That it may have been 3 days before they finally reached out.
Yeah, I think about the traditional measurements all the time. And to tell you, to answer your question specifically, I'll just give you this 10 seconds of background. Coming up from a product organization, and every product organization has what's called a UX team, a user experience team.
Mm-hmm.
And their goal and job is to, make things very intuitive and easy to understand. And whenever I've gone into a company, the first group I meet with is the UX team. And what I tell them is your job is not to make the screens easy to use. Your job is not to make the screens intuitive. Your job is to eliminate the screens. And when I look at some of the measurements that we have in our industry, average hold time, average handle time, I'm looking to eliminate those metrics altogether. I don't want there to be a hold time. I don't want people to ever hold because they shouldn't have to wait to get to the answers to their question. And so everything we're doing is designing of how do we eliminate people needing to be handled? How do we eliminate people needing to even hold? When you look at first call resolution, we're looking at no call resolution. And so even with time to happiness, I actually think that's a really good measurement. With time to happiness, though, you're measuring from the time they were unhappy to making them happy again, right?
Correct.
How do you just keep them happy? The way you
Bingo.
keep them happy is you predict what it is that they want. And if you think about how do you predict something, you start with what's the history? What does history tell us? And that's where the data can be so powerful. But you've got to have a way of understanding how to harness it, correlate it, and then use it for predictive purposes. And so what we're focusing on, with everything that we're doing is how do we shift away from this customer satisfaction score? And even Fred Reichelt, who was at our conference, has talked about how he wants to transition companies away from NPS and focusing on a measurement that shows that you're keeping them happy, which is this concept of earned growth. Those customers do more with you because you've kept them happy. You haven't made them go through the ups and downs of, now I've had a bad experience, you got to get me back to being a promoter. And so as we think about all of the traditional metrics, we're thinking, how do we disrupt all of those? How do we make it so that you're just constantly thinking ahead, what's around the corner for that consumer, and you're getting the information to them even before they're, way before the point of contact. It's really how do you get to the point of thought?
Right. I love that. I mean, to me, that's utopia, nirvana, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I think there is some realism to it. I believe it's almost impossible to eliminate all of the bad stuff, but to mitigate it to a point where it's almost negligible is a lofty goal, I would say. And I think that's a possibility given all that we're talking about and the capability. I always love to end our conversation by asking our guest, is there one last nugget of information or one last insight that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up? I know I'm throwing a curveball. A lot of times I warn the guest this is going to happen, but for some reason today, I have a feeling I didn't have to do that with you.
Yeah, what I would tell any of your listeners is when we think about technology, we always deliver it in a spectrum. We have some of the largest financial services companies, banks, insurance companies, healthcare providers. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have some of the most recognizable and largest tech companies in the world that leverage our technology. And so when you have that sort of a spectrum of customers, you're going to have some that are going to say, we're going to adapt technology, automation, AI very slowly. You have others that are saying, we want headless automation. We want to set it and forget it. We don't want anybody touching anything. We just want things to happen. We're going to be able to deliver against that full spectrum. But our default approach to AI is not to displace human beings. It's to assist them. It's to help them understand the difference between what's interesting and what's important, and focus on the things that are most important to the people that they serve, whether that's employees or consumers. And so everything we deploy has got a very specific philosophical approach, and then a unique use case of a real world problem happening today to solve. We don't want people to look back at generative AI and think, oh, this is blockchain. It's a solution looking for a problem. There are real things that we can do to deploy technology to help the humans provide better service to humans. And that's kind of our goal.
I love it. I love it. And I also love the goal of everything you stand for, which is to retain customers, attract customers, and grow relationships. And that's ultimately, throughout this entire conversation, what this was all about.
So, absolutely.
Well, thanks for being on the show, Joe. This is why we call it Amazing Business Radio. You've been a phenomenal resource and guest. Much appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure, Shep.
All right, everybody, that wraps it up. Another interview. We will be back next week with another great guest. Until that time, this is Shep Hyken reminding you to always be amazing.